Hello, this is a lesson on decimals, fractions, and percents. And what I want you to do is write the title at the top and then split your page into 4 sections. And when you're ready to continue, press play. Please pause now. Okay, so let's look at the first box. In the first box, I want you to write what you see on your screen, percents to decimals, and pause the video to do so. Make sure you copy everything down, and when you're ready to continue, press play. Please pause now. So here, what I have written under percents to decimals, I've written this, Dr. Pepper, and you might be wondering why I did that. Now, I tell kids this helps me remember which way to move the decimal point. So in case you ever forget, I'll say, remember Dr. Pepper, and hopefully that'll remind you how to use this method here to help you. D here represents the decimal, and then P is the percent. So if we're changing a percent into a decimal, then what we do is we take our pen and we start at the percent and we move 2 times the left, and then that'll give us our decimal. We end up at D. So you start at P and then you move it 2 times the decimal point 2 times the left, and then that'll give you the decimal form. So let's try that on all of these here. So 43% to make it a decimal. We're going to move it the decimal point 2 times the left. And on the number 43, the decimal point is at the very end of the number. It's after the 3. So here we're moving it 2 times the left. So then our answer is going to be 0.43. And in case you're wondering why we are moving it 2 times to the left, that's because we're dividing these by 100, and percent means out of 100. So moving the decimal point 2 times the left is the same as dividing a number by 100. Okay, so now let's look at number 2, 8%. The decimal point is after the 8, and now we're going to move the decimal point 2 times to the left. 1 and then 2, so now we have to put a placeholder, and then our decimal for 8% is 0.08. Number 3, the decimal, or the percent, excuse me, is 0.5%, and there's already a decimal in the number, so this is where we start. We start at that decimal point, okay, right here, and now we're going to move it 2 times the left, so we're going to go 1, 2, and we put a 0, so then our decimal for 0.5% is 0.005. And then the last one is 8 1/4. On 8 1/4%, you first want to change the 1/4 to a decimal, which you should have that one memorized for 1/4. It's 0.25, so we're going to put 8.25% underneath it. And now from here, we still have to make that percent a decimal, so we still have to move the decimal point 2 times the left. So 1, 2, I need another placeholder. So then my percent is going to be my decimal, 0.0825. On the upper right of your notes, I want you to copy what you see on the screen and pause the video to do so. When you're ready to continue, press play. Please pause now. So now to change a decimal into a percent, again, we're going to use the Dr. Pepper to help us figure out which way to move the decimal point, to help us remind us which way. So instead of dividing by 100, you're actually multiplying by 100. So here, the decimal, that's going to be our D, and the percent is our P. So we're going to start at the decimal, you're going to move 2 times to the right. Anytime you multiply a number by 100, you move the decimal twice to the right. So on number 1, you move the decimal twice to the right. It's going to end after the 5, so it's going to be 55, and then we label it percent. On number 2, we move it twice to the right, 1, 2. Now we need a placeholder, so then this is going to be 20%. Number 3, the decimal point is in between the 1 and the 5. Move it twice to the right, 1, 2, and then it's going to be 150%. So no matter what, it's always twice to the right because we're actually multiplying these by 100. And then 0.003, again, twice to the right, 1, 2, it lands in front of the 3, so my percent is 0.3%. Okay, on the lower left side, pause the video to copy what you see on your screen to your notes, and when you're ready to continue, press play. Please pause now. So on this one here, we're going to change a fraction to a percent. So what we're going to do first is we're going to divide and make it a decimal. So I want you to write on your paper 5 divided by 8, and then you can use a calculator to figure out the decimal, which is going to be 0.625. When you use a calculator, 5 divided by 8, 0.625. This is your decimal form, and now we change the decimal to a fraction. The decimal into a percent by multiplying by 100. So we go 1, 2. Move it twice to the right. And then our percent is going to be 62.5%. And then on number 2, we're going to do the same thing. Divide. You always divide the top number by the bottom number. So 17 divided by 4. And that's going to be 4.25 when you use your calculator. And then to make it a percent, you just move the decimal point 2 times the right. Okay, so then our percent is going to be 425%. Okay, and now in the fourth box, I want you to write these two problems. Pause the video to do so, and when you're ready to continue, press play. Please pause now. So for number 1, we're going to order these from least to greatest, and you want to write all the fractions in the same, all the numbers in the same form. So you can either choose to write them all as decimals or all as percents. You could do all as fractions as long as they have a common denominator, but usually decimals or percents work the best. So again, you can use your calculator to change 5/9 into a decimal. Okay, so when you change it into a decimal, you're going to get 0.5 repeating. So I'm just going to write that underneath it. And then for 50%, we're going to move the decimal point 2 times the left to make that percent into a decimal. So that's going to be 0.5. And then the third number is just 0.55. Okay. So now what we can do is we can add the second digit, since this one here, this last decimal, has 2 digits after the decimal point. Let's go ahead and add the second digit behind this one, which would be a 0. So I'm going to just add a 0. And then on this repeating decimal, for the repeating decimal, the second digit is going to be a 5. So I'm going to add a 5 in red. And you can already see that the smallest number is going to be 50%. Now you have to decide which one is the next number. So it's either 0.55, but this one's repeating, or this one here that's terminating, 0.55, and it stops. So I go to the next digit. Because this is a repeating decimal, the third digit behind the decimal point is going to be a 5. And on this one over here, the last one, the 0.55, there's no repeating decimal bar, no repeating bar, excuse me. So the third digit after this 5 is going to be a 0. So now you can see that 0.550 is the next to go. And then the biggest one is this one. So if we write the numbers in their original form, it's 50%. Then 0.55, and then the last one is 5/9. Now let's try number 2. I'm going to also choose to change them all to decimals. So for number 2, 7/10 is just going to be 0.7. And then we have 0.77. And then for the last one, the percent, we're going to move it, the decimal point 2 times the left to get its decimal form. And then that's 0.07. So this one, if we want to make them all 2-digit numbers, for the first decimal, we're going to change that into a 0.70, just add the 0. The other two already have 2 numbers behind the decimal point. So then our smallest is going to be 0.07, then 0.7, then 0.77. And so we're going to write them in their original form. So that's your answer for number 2, and that's all for your notes. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.